Jacob Zuma gets hero's welcome in Burkina Faso. Africa's uncle is back. Burkina Faso rolled out the red carpet this week. Not for Beyoncé, not for Messi, but for former South African President Jacob Zuma. Yes, you read that right. The man of laughter, scandals, and endless political comebacks landed in Ouagadougou and received what can only be described as a presidential homecoming. Crowds cheered, drums rolled, flags waved. Even the sun stood still for a moment to witness this African reunion. Zuma walked out of the plane smiling like a man who just won a corruption case and found his missing wallet at the same time. The people shouted, "Baba Zuma! Baba Africa!" And he waved back like, "My children, I never left." Rumor has it that Captain Ibrahim Traoré himself smiled proudly, whispering, "Welcome, elder of experience." Because let's be honest, when it comes to surviving politics, Zuma is not just a man, he's a syllabus. They don't make politicians like him anymore. He's the only man who can be fired, retire, and still trend every 6 months. Analysts say Zuma's visit may strengthen Southwest African ties. But the streets say something else. 2 strong men, 1 handshake, Africa will shake. In Africa, politicians don't retire, they recycle themselves. You can't cancel an African politician, you can only reintroduce him at another country's airport with a drum welcome. Our continent truly knows how to turn every headline into a comedy show. Jacob Zuma didn't just land in Burkina Faso, he landed in history again. Jacob Zuma stood before the people of Burkina Faso and spoke words that seemed to echo across the continent. Burkina Faso has done something exceptional, he declared, something many nations have not yet dared to do. With those words, Zuma placed himself among a growing circle of African freedom fighters, thinkers, and revolutionaries, who see in Captain Traoré's leadership not just a local revolution, but the rebirth of African dignity itself. Zuma's message was clear and unpretentious. No diplomatic jargon, no empty compliments. It was raw truth. He was voicing what millions across Africa already feel, that Burkina Faso's defiance against neo-colonial domination has become a beacon of what a truly independent and self-reliant Africa might look like. For a man like Jacob Zuma, who survived apartheid, endured imprisonment, and later led a country central to Africa's liberation story, this visit was far more than ceremonial, it was personal. It was as though the torch of resistance, once carried through the fires of South Africa's struggle, was now being handed to a younger warrior facing a modern empire, one built not on chains and whips, but on debt, media manipulation, and military pressure. In African tradition, elders say, when an old tree bends toward a young one, it is to pass on its shade. That was exactly what happened in Ouagadougou. Zuma, the seasoned elder, came to bless and strengthen the new generation of revolutionaries rising under Traoré's banner. His words resonated deeply across Africa because they touched an uncomfortable truth, that too many leaders have grown complacent under the shadow of foreign influence. Zuma even hinted at this when he said, "Some of our applicants here could not understand the real freedom on the continent." In that single line, he exposed a painful reality, that not all African governments are truly free, even when their flags wave proudly in the wind. Today, Burkina Faso under Captain Traoré stands as a rallying point for all who believe Africa's destiny must no longer be written in Paris, Washington, or Brussels. Zuma's arrival, met with songs, celebration, and defiance, was not just a visit. It was a moment of passing history, a symbolic handover between generations of struggle and hope. It was more than a speech. It was a declaration that a new Pan-African movement is taking shape. But let's pause to understand the deeper meaning behind it. Jacob Zuma, long portrayed as controversial by Western media and political elites, has always been a complex figure. Yet through all the storms, his belief in Pan-Africanism and true economic liberation has never wavered. For decades, he has insisted that Africa must reclaim control over its own natural wealth and reject the illusions of aid and partnership that mask foreign manipulation. So when Zuma stands beside Captain Traoré and praises Burkina Faso's bold defiance, it isn't just about one country, it's about the soul of Africa. His visit comes at a defining moment. Across the Sahel, nations like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have expelled foreign troops, reclaimed sovereignty, and begun charting an independent course. Meanwhile, others remain shackled by outdated colonial-era agreements that keep them politically restrained and economically dependent. When Zuma declared, Burkina Faso has done what others could not. His words rang like a challenge, a dare to leaders still afraid to break free. It was as if he was saying, look at this young man, this soldier who refused to bow. If he can stand tall, why can't you? That is what makes this moment revolution. It isn't just a ceremonial visit, it's the revival of a movement, a bridge between the liberation struggles of the past and the economic revolutions of today, between South Africa's long walk to freedom and Burkina Faso's determined march towards sovereignty in Ouagadougou. Zuma's presence carried the spirit of Africa's elders, the echoes of Mandela and Nkrumah, Lumumba and Sankara, whispering across generations that freedom must always be protected, always renewed. When he danced with the people, it wasn't merely a celebration, it was symbolism. A gesture that said, we are still one people, we still share one. The timing of Zuma's visit was also profound. It coincided with the arrival of dozens of Afro-descendants and African-Americans from across the diaspora. Many saw in Traoré's Burkina Faso a kind of homecoming, a place where Africans of all origins could reconnect with a new spirit of resistance, pride, and belonging. At the conference of Afro-descendants, Pan-Africanists from the Caribbean, the United States, Latin America, and Europe gathered under one message: Africa is rising again. As Dr. Arikana Chihamborikwa said upon arrival, we did not come as visitors. We came as returning sons and daughters of Africa. Her words reflected Zuma's, both calling for unity, both recognizing Burkina Faso's rising role as the heartbeat of a continental awakening. When Jacob Zuma declared that Burkina Faso has done something exceptional, it stirred memories of the 1980s, when Thomas Sankara's fiery voice once echoed across the African continent. Sankara famously said, "You cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness." Today, Captain Traoré embodies that same spirit, a fearless defiance fueled by patriotism and purpose. Hearing Zuma, one of Africa's liberation veterans, publicly acknowledge that spirit marked a turning point, and the timing couldn't be more symbolic. While Western leaders condemn Burkina Faso's alliance with the Sahel bloc and global media rush to brand Traoré as a dictator or militant, Zuma's words rise as a bold counter-narrative, one that tells Africans, do not be deceived. This young leader is doing what must be done. African elders often say a single tree cannot make a forest. Zuma's visit proved that the forest is indeed growing. From Johannesburg to Ouagadougou, from diaspora cities to remote African villages, a shared consciousness is awakened, one that refuses to be chained again by systems of economic and political control. Zuma's endorsement also brings moral weight and legitimacy to Traoré's leadership on the world stage. It signals that seasoned African voices, with decades of political struggle and experience, recognize the sincerity of Burkina Faso's fight. This is not isolation, it is independence. Not rebellion, but rebirth. And beyond politics, there was something profoundly emotional about the moment. Watching Zuma dance with the Burkinabe people, one could see an old warrior rediscovering the fire of his youth, the same spirit that once fueled Africa's liberation movements. The joy on his face wasn't ceremonial, it was pride. Deep down, Zuma must have felt it. That the future he and his comrades once dreamed of during the anti-apartheid struggle is finally taking root in places like Burkina Faso. This time, not through protests or boycotts, but through sovereignty, policy, and courage. Zuma's speech was short, but history often turns on just a few powerful words. We are here to support this country, he said. A single sentence, yet heavier than any diplomatic statement. It was more than solidarity, it was a rallying cry. A message to the entire continent. The time for hesitation is over. Perhaps the most striking part of his address came when he added, some of our applicants here could not understand the real freedom on the continent. That wasn't just criticism, it was a lesson. A reminder that freedom without self-determination is an illusion, and independence without sovereignty is nothing but a shadow. Zuma's message was clear. Africa's future will never be handed down by outsiders. It must be claimed, shaped, and defended by Africans themselves. As the drums quieted and the sun dipped over Ouagadougou, one truth became undeniable. The symbolism of this moment will outlive the headline. Zuma's dance, his words, his embrace of the Burkinabe people, together they painted the image of a continent rediscovering its voice. From the heart of the Sahel, a message resounded across the world. Africa will no longer ask for permission to be free. It will simply be free. And as Zuma departed Ouagadougou, his words lingered. Burkina Faso has done what others could not. For millions across Africa, that wasn't just about one nation. It was about hope. Hope that one by one, the rest of Africa will find the courage to do the same. Because as the African proverb reminds us, when the lion tells his story, the hunter will no longer be the hero. Today, Africa is finally telling her own story, from Ouagadougou to the world. This is the Black Post, where truth is verified, voices are amplified, and Africa writes its own future. If you believe in an Africa rising on its own terms, in dignity, self-reliance, and transformation, then join the movement. Like this video, share it far and wide, and let the world know a new Africa isn't coming. It's already here. And of course, subscribe to the Black Post, where we bring the African vision to life and make African stories go global. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.